Hey guys, welcome to my video write-up for this CTF challenge. The challenge is Flag Hunters. It's from picoCTF 2025. It's an easy reverse engineering challenge. So starting with the description, lyrics jump from verses to the refrain, kind of like a subroutine call. There's a hidden refrain this program doesn't print by default. Can you get it to print it? There might be something in it for you. The program source code can be downloaded here. So I already have the program downloaded. Here's the Python script. So it's nothing super long. Um, so starting from the top, it opens a flag.txt file and stores the contents of it within the flag variable. So since we're going to be testing it and running it locally first, I already created a flag variable. So it just has this flag, placeholder flag. Um, and then after that, it defines a variable called secret intro. We see that flag whatever the flag contents are put into this secret intro variable. And then the song Flag Hunters, it seems to be a song with a lot of verses. So it has a lot of lines, but at the very beginning, it contains that secret intro. And remember, that secret intro has our flag. So after defining this set of strings or the song Flag Hunters, um, we see that there's this helper function reader. We go all the way on the bottom. It passes in two variables, song flag hunters, so that really long string, and verse one. So verse one is essentially the start label, right? So you could see that the helper function starts off by initializing a few variables. Um, it gets all the lists or gets the, sh- the lines in the song and splits it by the new line character. And so basically, the song lines variable contains a list with each index being each line, right? So refrain in brackets is going to be its own line, where flag hunters uh, in the ether lighting up the grid, uh, that's going to be its own line. So basically, song lines is going to contain the song, right? So I'm just going to comment in. So song lines equals a list with all song lines. Afterwards, we're going to loop through each of those lines. So for I in range 0 to the length of song lines, I is going to be the index that we're currently looking at, and we're going from the first one being the 0th index all the way to the end, which is the length of the song lines. Looks like we're initializing some of the variables or declaring the variables that we saw at the top. So the start is I plus 1. So if the song's I equals start label, we saw the start label is verse 1. So if the index we're looking at is verse 1, we'll mark that as the start, right? So we'll mark that next line as the start. So over here we see verse 1. It's marking the next line. Command line wizards, we're starting it right. So that one is going to be the start. So I'm going to put in a comment just to help us. So if songlines I equals start label, so this is going to be verse 1. I'll also put it up here. Else if songlines I equals refrain, refrain equals I plus 1. So similarly, this is just marking the start of the refrain. So when we see refrain in brackets, right? So it'll be at this very top. So it's marking the start of the refrain, which is we're lighting flag hunters in the ether, lighting up the grid. So I'm going to put in refrain marks start of refrain. And then again, it does the same thing for the return statement, right? So you have refrain equals the start of the refrain, and then refrain return is where the return statement is. And looks like there's only one return, so it's marking after the refrain, it marks the index where the return statement is. So marks where the return statement is. So cool. So far, start of refrain, we have this, where the return in the refrain. Cool. So pretty much we know what most of these variables do. It gets the list of the lyric lines in a list, stores it in a list. Then it goes through that list for I in range, 0 to the length of song lines. Uh, basically finds the start of the song, where the refrain is, and then where the end of that refrain is. Afterwards, it defines a couple more variables. So lip equals start. So it's going to be starting from where that verse 1 is. And then line counts equals 0. Right? So we see a while loop. While not finished, so if the line equals end, then finish equals true. So while it's not at the end and line counts as less than max lines, this max lines is defined as 100. So while we're not at, while we haven't printed out 100 lines essentially, right? So line counter is just a incrementing variable. And as long as it doesn't hit 100, we're going to continue on this while loop. So while not finished and line count is less than max lines, line count equals +1. So that's the incrementing variable. For line in song lines, lip dot split, and you have this semicolon. If line equals this and song lines lip does not equal empty string, then we just continue. So it looks like we'll process what the line is. And an interesting thing is that for line and song lines lip dot split semicolon, uh, this line variable is pretty misleading. It should be something like phrase. So it should be like for phrase and song lines lip dot split semicolon. So the lip is the index that we're currently on. So I'm gonna put in a comment. Lip equals index we're looking at. So this is processing the song line by line, but then within each line, it's splitting the line by semicolon and then processing each phrase that's split by semicolon. So, so this one, if empty string, then this is just saying to continue. Otherwise, so if the phrase equals refrain, then we set the index to the refrain, right? So if refrain go or set index to refrain to start of refrain. But before it does that, we could see that the refrain return, so that return statement that we saw up here, this return statement on line 25, it sets it to a return space and then wherever we left off +1, right? So setting the next line. So setting the return statement to the next line. I'm just going to put in parentheses where we left off. Else if crowd. So this one is a regex lookup. If it has crowd in it, followed by anything else within the line, it asks us for user input, and then our input gets put into the actual song line itself. So we can see whatever input we add, it's going to be crowd : space, and then whatever input we add. So if crowd in line, append user input. And then over here, the return. So this is also a similar regex lookup for return space a number. This is essentially looking if there's a return phrase in that line. And we're going to be setting the lip or the index that we're going to be currently looking at or printing out into line.split.1 or line.split and the first index of that. So basically it's taking the string and turning it into a list. So for example, if it were like return 10, it'll split this, meaning it's going to make it into a list where return is the first index or the 0th index and 10 is the first. So essentially it's taking that first index. So it's putting the lip or the index that we're going to be currently looking at as whatever number follows return. So in this case, I'm just going to comment um, setting index to whatever number is after return. Otherwise, if it's the end, then we set as true. That one's pretty straightforward. And then else, we print the line. So basically, what it's doing is it's going through the song. It's going to mark the starting verse, right? So it's going to mark this as the start. It also marks the start of the refrain and where the refrain ends or where the return statement is. Then afterwards, starting from the start, command line wizard, we're starting it right. It starts printing out these variables. When it hits this refrain, it's going to jump to the refrain. Before it jumps to the refrain, it also overwrites this line, the line 25, the return. It sets it to whatever line we're going to be printing out next, or where we left off in the song. So it's going to start with command line wizards. We're starting it right. When it hits refrain, it's going to go up here. When it gets to the return statement, it goes back down to where we left off. So after this whole verse prints out, goes to the refrain. After the refrain is done, it'll go back here. So we could go see that lyric reader.py. So yep, it starts with the command line wizards, then it jumps to the refrain, and then within the refrain, right, there's the crowd variable, so it has our input. So I'm just gonna put user input. Then it jumps back to echoes in memory. Then it goes back to the refrain. You can see our user input again is used, and then it prints out the rest of the song and basically jumps back and forth from the song to the refrain. So remember that interesting part where we're doing that split, right? So we're not really looking line by line. We're looking through each phrase in the line. And so you can see what I mean. So uh, song lines lip.split with the semicolon. If I do print and then song line split by semicolon, and let's say I replace this comma with a semicolon, right? We run the program. So over here we could see it's first processing command line wizards. So that's why it prints out command line wizards. Then it prints out we're starting it right. It's because we are processing it through phrase. So command line wizards, it processes that, and then we're starting it right, and then processes that, and then prints it out. In addition, we also saw that if what we processed is return space a number, then we're setting the lip to whatever that number is, right? So what if we injected something, right? There's no there's no user input sanitization. So we could basically control what the lip is or what the index that it's going to jump to if we pass in a return statement, right? So since it's processing phrase by phrase, um, if we were to append something in the line like, x semicolon return space 0, then technically it's going to process, right? Because it's splitting it by semicolon, it's going to process the x, it's going to print the x, then it's going to process the return statement. And once it processes the return statement, it goes down here. let's say we put return space 0, the lip is then going to be set to 0, and then we're going to start at the top. And we do want to start at the top because remember, our flag variable, the contents of that flag, is in the secret intro. So let's go test that out. I'm going to also undo that change I made up here. And then I'm also going to comment this out. Or actually, I'll keep that commented in so you can see that. So I'm going to go start it up. So as you can see, right, it's processing it technically line by line right now, but if there were a semicolon, it would process it differently, where it's going to process the first part of the phrase, whatever's left of the semicolon, and then the second part, whichever is after the semicolon. So what if I do x semicolon return 0? Yeah, and then it goes back here, goes to the refrain, and then over here, I'll stop it real quick. We can see the placeholder flag. And then as you can see, when it prints out or when it returns to the refrain, or when it gets to that portion, right, we're printing in crowd colon space x, right? So it processes that part, then it processes return 0. So in that case, it prints out crowd x. And then over here, we could see that it jumps to the start, right? So the start being Pico Warriors Rising, Puzzles Laid Bare. So yep, we have the flag. And so for the Pico gem, all you have to pretty much do is launch the instance. After a few seconds, it should give you like a netcat. Pasting it in here. We see it's the same exact script running. Then we'll pretty much input the same thing, return 0. See, it processes crowd space or crowd X. Then it jumps to the secret intro. And then over here, we see the flag. Thanks for watching.